All right. Hello, I'm Vanessa. Welcome back to the podcast. I am really excited to have this conversation today with John Turner. So, John is a consultant and a productivity coach. He's also trying to be retired, but he keeps getting pulled out of retirement.
Right.
But he works with Team Sweasey in San Luis Obispo. And he and I have connected a couple of times on different projects, but a colleague of mine sent me his answers to a leadership questionnaire that he filled out because she was so impressed by his responses. And as soon as I read it, I had the little goosebumps on my arms, and I said, yes, I have to get John on my podcast because he has been in sales leadership for 40 years. And he's been through the trenches. He has some great stories. And he also has a lot of just life wisdom about leadership and leading teams and specifically leading salespeople, which is a whole nother ball game versus leading administrators. So if you're in a leadership role on a real estate team or you're an agent who is growing their team, I think this is going to be a really valuable conversation for you as you think about developing your sales skill, your leadership skills. You've built your sales skills. Now you need to become a leader so that you can continue to grow. And I think this conversation is going to have a lot of nuggets of wisdom. So, John, thank you so much for taking time out to talk with me.
It is totally my pleasure. I'm honored. I mean, when you invited me to do this, it's like I got goosebumps. So, hey, one of the things I want to say at the very start is a big thank you to Pro REA Staffing. I mean, we started working with you guys 3 years ago. We're working on our third hire right now with you guys. We wouldn't go back if you guys were fantastic. And so we have two people on our team now that you helped us source, you helped us go through the hiring process. And then when you partnered with Kathleen Metcalf after the hire to help train our new hires, it's been a great relationship. So I'm honored to be here, but I wanted to thank you first for what you've done for our team.
Well, I appreciate that. We love working with you guys, and it's exciting
It's
to stay with a team and to continue to help them grow and expand. That's what we live for.
it's a good
So
partnership.
it is. And so one of the things that stood out on this leadership questionnaire that you filled out was that you do everything based on your three core values, that you lead
Yes.
to your values, you talk about the values. So I think we should start with, what are your core values?
Well, we have three core values, and we developed these core values after our leadership team, which is composed of our principal, Hal Sweasey, and then Hal actually is a broker associate, and so our broker is Randy Steiger. And so the three of us, Hal called me one day, and um, back I'd been retired about 8 months from almost 40 years in the insurance industry, and he wanted me to come to work for him, but I didn't know what he wanted me to do, and I don't think he knew either. But he knew he wasn't happy with the climate and culture in his office, and so we had to make some very difficult decisions in the first year around personnel. And as we were remodeling and rebuilding his business, Hal called me and said, "You got to read this book." And I was getting on a plane to Hawaii, and I read the book on the plane. And before I even got my luggage, when we landed, I'm calling him and going, "This is us." And it was a book called Traction. And I forget the author's name, um, but, but what we did subsequently
Mhm.
is we started working in the book as a team. And about 6 or 8 months later, we actually contacted the people at Traction and worked with one of their consultants. We had them in 3 or 4 times to work with us. And it was a result of reading the book and working with those people that we developed our core values. Okay,
So
so
talk
that's the
about
back.
the sort of the premise of the book and why that resonated with you.
Well, the premise of the book is it's very difficult to manage and lead a business. And most, if you remember an old book called The E-Myth, the myth in America is that because you're self-employed, you're an entrepreneur. And most of the time, that's the farthest thing from the truth. You're just going to work every day in a job, but your boss happens to be an idiot, which of course is you. And so the premise of that book, I think the authors of Traction used some of that in their thinking, in that they were trying to help people that were business owners to become business leaders and entrepreneurs. And so it gave us some structure, and it turned out to be a fantastic read for all three of us. And we use it every day. I wouldn't say we use it, like the textbook, but we pick the pieces that fit us,
Mhm.
and that we have the competencies to execute. So our three core values, number one is we're team players. That comes first. Number two, we put our client's interest first, or said maybe a better way, we put our client's interests above our own.
Mhm.
And you would think that the client core value would come before the team core value. But we put the team first because it's the team that interacts with the client.
Mhm.
And then our third core value is we're results oriented. You can't work with House Sweasey and not put in your best effort. I've worked with hundreds of agents, although most of them in the insurance industry. Hal's the hardest working, most disciplined human being with whom I've ever worked. And so if you're going to be on Hal's team, you're going to work hard. You're going to receive a lot of appreciation from Hal, and but you're going to work hard.
Mhm. I think you've developed from building on those core values, just from the little window I've had into the team. You guys also managed to have a lot of fun and have a really good camaraderie. And when you talk about the climate and the culture, I think you and Hal and the whole team have done a really good job of making that a climate where people want to do their best work. They want to put their best effort forward.
I think you're right. I think I don't think we're there yet, but we're building to be there. I don't think you're ever built. I think it's kind of like the Golden Gate Bridge. You paint it and you get to the one end, and now it's time to go start over again because you're never done. I think that's building and leading a team is the same thing. You're never done. But one of our sub points under we are team players is we take our work seriously, but not ourselves. And so in every interaction that I have with people on our team, I'll bet you we're laughing,
Mhm.
and
It
that's
makes a
important.
difference. Yeah. So, there's so many values and things that are important when you're thinking about what should our core values be. What did you have any trouble narrowing down the list, or was it easy to identify that
Um,
those were the three things you were going to focus on?
great question. The whole process of developing our core values took about 90 days, an hour and a half a week. We have as we were in the middle of rebuilding and remodeling his company,
Mhm.
we met once a week with what we call a level 10 meeting. Now we do that once a month. And a level 10 meeting is a meeting, if you think back to all the meetings you've been to in a corporate or company environment, how many of them would rise to the level of you'd give that meeting a 10? And most people would say the meetings they go to are threes and fours.
Yeah.
So we've developed a way to hold this meeting. The meeting has a structure to it with the same outline, an agenda every time. And at the end of each meeting, we score the meeting, the three of us.
All right.
And one of the things that we do is we start on time and end on time. It's, if you go to meeting school, that's one of the first things you learn, right?
Yeah.
And so as these level 10 meetings really helped us deal with issues, and so that the issues hopefully don't linger.
Right.
Did I answer your question, or did I get off on a tangent
A
there?
little bit of a tangent. So
Yeah, okay.
in those
Help me
hour and a half
refocus.
in those hour and a half meetings for 90 days, how did you flush out? What was, so on a practical sort of boots on the ground level, how did you go from all the different values you could pick from that are important to you to narrowing it down to those three specific ones?
Oh, I think the book Traction helped us. I mean, it gave us some direction.
Mhm.
First, I would say we spent a lot of time individually coming up with ideas that we would float with the group. Ultimately, how Randy and I are stakeholders. Hal is the stockholder, and so at the end of the day, Hal was the one who made the final decision, as it should be.
Mhm.
Um, uh, but it was not without a ton of collaboration.
Right.
And these core values have been in place since 2018, and they've never once been changed because we feel so strongly about these core values as the platform for how we do things. And I mean, from hiring to deciding somebody shouldn't be on the team.
Mhm.
And one of the things that happened recently was we had somebody leave our team, but we didn't let them go. They looked up at the core values and said, I I'm not in alignment.
Mhm.
And so they said, guys, hey, I love you, but I'm not in alignment. I think it's not fair to you that I stay on the team. And they went somewhere else, and we got somebody that does align. I mean, the core values are non-negotiable.
Mhm.
If you don't subscribe to these three things in your core, that's who you are. You can't be on this team. And if you violate the core values after a fashion, after an opportunity to be coached and to have an opportunity to maybe uh, grow and develop, you won't be on the team.
Right. So
And everybody knows that.
I harp on this core value thing a lot because what I hear over and over and over again when I interview top professionals, job seekers, they tell me the most important thing when they're looking for a job is that they find a company that aligns with their core values. And the challenge I have is that so many of my clients haven't taken the time to really define that. They might have some core values, but they don't own them the way you guys do. And so what happens is we have a harder time finding somebody who's going to be a lasting match. Because if you don't know, it's like dating, right? Like if you don't know who you are and what you want, it's really hard to find the right person because you're
Right.
not putting out the right vibes. I mean, it's like that. It's like that with companies, right? So you're very clear about who you are, what you stand for, what's important to you. And that way you put that out there, the right people can say, I connect with that. I mean, job seekers will call us and say, oh, I read your job ad for such and such job. And I'm so excited. I would love to work for a team that believes in XYZ because that's really important to me. I'm really excited about this job. It has nothing to do with the salary, the job duties, the location. None of that matters. It's I believe what they believe. I share those values. I want to be a part of that. And that's powerful. That's when you get full buy-in and you get people who show up 100% every day.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. Currently, we're working with your company to add a person to our team. We had an interview, I think it was last week. We did the interview on Zoom because the person hadn't had her second shot yet. And Hal and I were the interviewers, and we took the first 35 or 40 minutes to do the job interview thing, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of that, we brought in the two people with whom this person would be working the closest. And we kind of switched chairs. So they were sitting up in the front of the room. So they were on camera with our candidate. And my question was to the two of them, tell our candidate what it's like to work in a company where that has a platform of these three core values. And as the two employees were talking, two incredibly valued employees, we're talking to this person, I'm looking at Hal and I got a tear running down my face going, brother, we're doing something right.
Yeah. Because they're excited. They're
Yeah.
bought into the mission and
Yeah.
they could really articulate like why
Mhm.
they want to be there is in alignment with your values.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's so
It's
cool.
fun. It
so
is
cool
so
when that
fun.
happens. And the other thing I think is important for people to understand is your core values are really whatever your core values are. I mean, as the leader, they emanate from you. And they don't always have to be altruistic. I always tell the story. I had this team up in Canada. The woman gets on the launch call with me and she's like, look, here's what you need to know. I'm sarcastic. It's politically incorrect around here. It's sort of like razzle dazzle, like rough and tumble. And we like to joke with each other. And this person has to be able to, they have to love Seinfeld as it's like the TV show. And I was like, are you kidding me? What is this? But I put that in the job ad. I said, like, it's politically incorrect. It's rough and tumble. You have to love Seinfeld, blah, blah, blah. People came out of the woodwork. I mean, people were so excited to find their people, their sarcastic brothers and sisters in real estate, right? And that was
Yeah,
always like stuck with me that you just have to be authentically you and just own it. Like you shouldn't be a
right.
jerk if that's your authentic self. We need to work on that. But other than, extreme behavior, whatever it is that like motivates you, drives you is your set of core values. Like don't pretend to have a different set. Own it
Right.
because
Yeah.
there are people out there who want to be with you.
Authenticity is a great word. And,
Yes.
I didn't hear it in business until about the last third of my career.
Yeah, it's
It's a
become
great
people,
word.
the consciousness is definitely changing, right? We're
Yeah.
definitely in a different era
Yeah.
than we were in the 80s and 90s. Okay, so one of the other things that you said in this questionnaire, I'm going to read this verbatim. I hope you don't mind. So the
Uh-oh.
question was, what are your toughest challenges when it comes to leading? And you said, it's the challenge of leading 13 individuals. There's nothing so unequal as the equal treatment of an equal people. The challenge is leading each individual in the way that they want to be led. And I thought that was so powerful. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I wish I was totally good at that.
It's
That's
like we're all
that's work in
seeking
progress.
growth, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's work in progress. Hal works a lot in the sales part of his business on the four personality types, and he's done a lot of work in that arena over the years. And I'd never really been exposed to that, so that's not a strength of mine. But what I have been exposed to is, when you are in a position of leading independent contractors, that's a very different role than being a mid-level management person in a company where you're asking employees to do something and you're not hoping they'll comply. They're most likely going to comply, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You have
And
positional leadership in that
yeah,
in that sense.
with an independent contractor, they can tell you to go pound sand, right? So the only power you have, power, some people don't like the word power. I love the word power because I think of its synonym, and that's influence. Most people think of power as negative. I think of it as influence. The only influence I have with an independent contractor is the influence they grant me to have with them. And so that takes on a different role, right? A different way of going about it. I think I shared with you on the phone, last week when we talked, that back in the early 2000s, I hired two brand new agents about the same age. I hired them within a month of each other. Their offices were 5 miles from one another, and they became, close friends and allies, which is what we coached.
Mhm.
We wanted them. It's a lonely business sometimes, and when one of them, maybe his performance wasn't up to what they told me they wanted it to be, and that's the key there too, is what they wanted it to be. If I got in the kitchen of the first one, he'd melt. So I'd have to put my arm around him and go, hey dude, I love you. You're great at this. I think you can do more. Your goals are a little higher than where you are now. How can I help you get there?
Mhm.
The other one, I put my arm around him, use every expletive in the book, and hit him upside the head with a 2x4. And man, the rest of the year he'd close it out and be a top performer. But absent of the 2x4,
Yeah.
what didn't happen? So how did I learn to lead these two people into totally different ways? And that's, you just spend time with them.
Mhm.
You walk in the room I say I walk in there, I love my agents. I didn't like them all, but I loved them all.
Mhm.
And so, you just try to get to know them and find out what works.
And I think just
I,
having that awareness of that point of I'm leading individuals. I'm not leading this nebulous team where they're all the same. They're not, like you very clearly articulated, right? We all have different ways that we need to be motivated. And so just I think that awareness that you have and that taking the time, right? Because your job as a manager is to take the time to motivate, coach, train, all of that, your people. And that's your number one focus. So like you really were able to hone in and identify what everybody needed and do your best to provide that for them.
yeah, the person on our team that is Hal's executive assistant and ISA, is somebody that we source through your company, and she's just doing a fantastic job. When she's asked to um, work with our independent contractor agents, I kind of tease her. I go, "Hey, remember, working with independent contractors is like herding cats. I mean, it has to be their idea before they're gonna act. So it's our role to help them self-discover that whatever we're asking them to do is in the best interests of the company and themselves."
Let's get into that because that's a very common issue, right? The admin has a new system that they're rolling out or a new procedure. There's a new something that they need the agents to do. And they don't just want to say, if you don't do it, you don't get paid because
Right.
that takes everybody off. So how, if you were coaching an executive admin who was trying to implement something that agents, he needed the agents to go do something, how would you coach her or him to roll that out?
Well, I think the first thing is if you're going to roll it out, let's say in a group setting, you're going to roll out the concept or idea or new tactic, right?
Mhm.
And I think back in my day, I'll probably show my age here. There, we talked about WIIFM. Remember we had FM radio way back when, and WIIFM was what's in it for me. And so to approach them with the what's in it for me approach, well, I used that word twice, didn't I? To go after it that way, I think is a good start. And then secondarily, I would say don't expect anything to happen because you rolled something out in a group setting.
Right.
If you have 4 salespeople, you'd be absolutely fortunate to have one of them jump on it.
Mhm.
So it's going to take one-on-ones and not one one-on-one. It's going to take multiple one-on-ones to help them see how it impacts themselves and the company.
Mhm. Absolutely. And if you're saying anything in a group setting, at least one person isn't listening to you
Yeah.
as they're
And
staring at you.
leadership is not much different than sales in the sense that the best sales people in the world, in my humble opinion, ask great questions.
Mhm.
Okay, transfer that skill to leadership, and I would say that would be very much the same.
Mhm.
So if you can help people self-discover, back in my old career, if I could help you self-discover that you wanted to buy insurance because I ask you a number of questions and you go, "Oh yeah, well, I really want to do this." Most people go, "I have to buy insurance." And the people who want to buy insurance are the ones that hopefully I worked with and they understand why they're doing this.
Right.
So I don't want to put my notes in our tracking system. I mean, that's one of the ones we're working on right now and we're struggling with it.
It's a classic.
Yeah. So to help them understand how it impacts them and the company, we'll continue to work on it. And we don't expect perfection overnight.
Right.
Perfection's way overrated anyway.
Right. So we've danced around this, but I want to really dive into it. So there's a difference between positional leadership and inspirational leadership, right?
Yeah.
And so positional is I'm your boss, you have to do what I
Right.
say or you get fired. That obviously doesn't work with independent contractors. So how do you position yourself as that inspiring leader that people want to follow? What are some, do you have any tips, tricks, suggestions, advice for somebody who's feeling like they don't have a good handle on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. My last role, before I retired, I was assigned to work with 40 people, 40 independent contractor agents who owned their own, had their own locations. It was their own, to the public, it was their business, even though it had our company's logo. Um, of those 40, only 20 really granted me the influence to help them, because 20 really just were kind of checked out, didn't want to grow, didn't want to change. So of those 20, I would say that um, they have to know you care about them. I mean, when I walked in their office or was talking with them on the phone, it wasn't all business. You
Mhm.
know, how are the kids? Maybe I know their mom and dad are got issues with aging. How are your mom and dad?
Mhm.
Really getting to know them. I mean, the one I was telling you about where I had to put my arm around him and tell him how much I loved him, and then he'd perform. In the last 2 years, I went to his daughter's weddings. You know, the other one where I hit him upside by with a 2x4, I was the best man at his wedding last year. So I'm dead serious when I say you love your agents,
Mhm.
and the more you love them, the more that they will grant you influence. I was on the phone call with one of my former agents last week. He's 75 years old. He's not going away. He's still getting after it, and he said, I miss you, because the things that we would do to enhance his business together, were all, you know, came from that personal relationship.
Mhm.
And he hasn't developed that yet with the person that is there now. And he will,
Mhm.
but he hasn't. That takes time. I mean, I worked with him for 20 years.
That's a long
Yeah,
relationship that you build a
yeah.
lot of
By the way, I
trust
was
and
at
a lot
his
of
daughter's weddings too.
nice.
So I think the key is to, if you're going to lead independent contractors, it helps to develop that friendship-based relationship, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Mhm. I think that's a really insightful piece and really worth honing in on. I mean, you do need to truly and genuinely care about the people you lead. These are the people who are in your care. You are a
Yeah,
leader. Like this is why that we use the term servant leader. Servant doesn't mean
right,
you're subservient to them. It means that you're there to serve and support the people who, may or may not choose to follow you. Hopefully they all get on board and follow you.
right,
And so this is something I harp on a lot as well is look, if that isn't who you are, if that isn't what you want, if you're not able to put yourself in the position where you want to be serving the people underneath you, if you don't want to support them, then you should not put yourself in that leadership role. You should find someone else to replace you in that position on a team, or find something else to do, because uh, you you have to do that to be successful, period. There's no way around it.
right.
So
And the word authentic pops back into our conversation as well. That trust me, they will know if you're faking it. You
yes,
know,
they will. Absolutely. Well, John, this was so much fun. I think we covered so many great points, and I am so excited to share this. Is there anything that you want, any kind of thoughts or tips or words of wisdom that you'd want to share before we wrap up?
I wrote a couple things down because I didn't know where this conversation was gonna take us. One of the things that I've used many times since I read a book, I would just ask the question many times. The 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 concept of sales versus service kind of comes into play a lot. People, I go, what's most important, right? Sales or service? And I get a mixed mixed answer on that. And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but I always follow it up with a second question. And I said, you know, did the founder of our company, in this case, in the insurance industry, sell the first policy first or service it? And of course, he had to sell it. And so none of us have a job in any company until somebody sells something.
Mhm.
And so, you know, I try to coach our customer service team to understand that concept, but I also coach our sales team to understand that without these great people behind you doing the work, you wouldn't have anything to sell, right?
Right.
And so it's bringing your sales team and your customer service team together that I think is so important, which leads me to one last thing.
Yeah.
And my one last thing is have you ever seen the definition of the word sell?
No.
Uh, in the book, there's a series of books, and the first one I think is called The Go Giver,
Okay.
and it's a short book, so I can read it. And the second one is, I think, The Go Giver gets more, sells more, does more, something like that.
Mhm.
On the very first page of the second book, and it has a green cover, it defines the word sell. And the word sell comes from an old English word, sellen, Sellan. And you may be surprised to hear what it means, because many people, especially those who have maybe a negative view of salespeople, and I think sales is a very artful, skillful role. It doesn't mean to take, doesn't mean we're going to take your money. What it means is the opposite. It means to give. The word sell means
Hmm.
to give your time, your knowledge, your expertise, your passion, your enthusiasm to help people get what they want. And to me, when I read that 15 years ago, I probably told this story once a week for the last 15 years, because it's so impactful
Yes.
that if you just, oh, I'm not a salesperson, I like service. Well, do you, are you a giver or a taker? Oh no, I get, well then you are selling. You just don't know it.
That needs to be up on the wall, like in every office. That is
Yeah.
such a wonderful and powerful reframing from for a lot of people of like what you're asked to do as a salesperson. And I think that's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I think that is a perfect place for us to wrap up today. John, thank you so much. This was so much fun. I really appreciated getting to chat with you and kind of learn more about your background and your words of wisdom.
Well, it was my pleasure, and more importantly, my honor to be with you today.
Take care.